Hey, Twisted listeners, I'm Cindy,
And I'm Diva
and this is Twisted Listers, a podcast about murder.
and Liz.
And we're back after taking a week off because my internet was booty bullshit. And I was like, fuck these motherfuckers. I'm never going to give in. And then I gave in and I'm paying them $10 a month more and it's fixed. And it makes me really angry that they can just like slow your internet down to steal more money from you. But hey,
Yeah.
that's capitalism, baby.
Let's make the product worse so you buy a more expensive version of the same thing.
Yeah, when the original product was fine until we intentionally destroyed it to make more profit. Yeah.
It's like me and strawberries right now. I'm in a thing with strawberries where they keep getting shittier and shittier, and then I'm forced to buy like the $10 strawberries, and it's like getting really out of control.
I'm growing my own. I have 2 plants, which isn't really
So
that
smart.
much. You need like 5 or 6 to get like a good haul, but like
I'm needing to eat like a pound a week, so it's like tough.
Yeah, that's a
to grow
lot.
that much.
It is. This is a good time for it though. I'll plant a few more plants and then I can give you some because they're pretty. Oh, you know what? I just planted a whole row of seeds. So depending on how quick they come up, I will actually have a ton of strawberries.
I will take your extra berries for sure.
Hell yeah. Okay, anyway, hi guys. Sorry.
Gardening corner
and capitalism is bullshit corner. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks everybody for still listening. Last week we still got like a good amount of downloads even without new content. So that's always
people said they were catching up too, because sometimes the 2 episodes a week people kind of fall behind, and
Yeah, I think a lot of people took that time to get back up to speed, which is awesome. Thanks so much, you guys. This week we are finally doing what I chose, which is Murders of Australia.
Yes.
We did this one a long time ago. Like
one of our first lists. It's long since down.
So it was like a 3-hour podcast with 10 fucking cases. I can't believe we ever did that. The idea of that now, like, I can't believe we ever did that. We were so hardcore. But I really, even though it was such a long time ago, I remember really enjoying this topic. So I'm really glad that we're doing it again.
And of course, we've done like the big heavy hitters for other like things, like Ivan Milat for hitchhiker murders and Catherine Knight for cannibals, of course. But there's still so many insane murders from Australia that there's like enough to go around for many more times.
So. Yeah, and we have a lot of Australian listeners, and y'all have a lot of murders. So I'm doing one today that I think is like, a pretty well-known case. And then the other one I'm doing like a child murder, which is very unlike me. I know. This case was really captivating for whatever reason though. So interested to share that horrific shit with y'all. Do we have any news? We posted a new Patreon for sure. So there's a new Patreon episode. Also, if you guys message us on Patreon, we might not always see it because Patreon, let's just be real, it's kind of a shitty website, or maybe it just can't.
The interface,
yeah, it's not great. So if you ever reach out to us and we don't get back to you, just send us a direct email to our Gmail because we'll get right back to you.
Yes.
But you can join us on Patreon, patreon.com/twistedlisters. You can join TikTok, which I rarely post on, but we're on there and we have a lot of videos from, prior, when we were posting. That's just at Twisted Listers. If you'd like to join us on Instagram, you can do that at
Twisted Listers PCast.
If you would like to send us an email, whether you're a patron or not, you can do that at
twistedlisterspod@gmail.com.
And if you would like to check out our website and buy some stickers, you can do that at
twistedlisterspod.com.
twistedlisterspod.com. All right. Yes. And I chose, so I think you are going first.
Yeah. So speaking of the murder of children, I'm going to talk about Mr. Cruel.
Oh, this one is horrific, but I always think it's worse. This sounds terrible to say worse than it is because, like, again, a million's a million, but I always think that there's like 10 victims. Every time I hear Mr. My original, like, first response, my first response is like, oh, this motherfucker. But there's not. Not to spoil the story.
We'll talk about it. You may or may not be right.
Yeah. I guess it depends on how you look at it. And also, I guess we're not sure. But It's a terrible fucking story. I guess whatever it is, it's just like something about this case is horrible, like even beyond the case. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't want to steal your thunder. Please.
Okay.
Please
yeah, this
proceed.
guy's a real boogeyman, if you will.
Yes.
In a very real way. It's all happened the chunk of it that we know of happened in the suburbs of Melbourne in 1987 to 1991. Okay. And in August 1987, we're just going to jump right into the first attack here without any background, obviously, because here he is. August 1987 at 4 a.m., a man wearing a ski mask / balaclava, I'll call it ski mask probably. It's more common in the US, I think, to say that. Breaks into the house of an unnamed family. So we don't know the identities of these killers, or the identity of these victims.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So he breaks into the house of this family in the suburb of Lower Plenty. He ties up the parents and the young son and puts them all in a closet, gagged and blindfolded.
Oof.
He then takes their 11-year-old daughter into the bathroom just meters away from that closet and rapes her.
Oh, God. This guy is a fucking absolute piece of shit nightmare.
Yes. Before this assault, he also took the time to cut the phone lines.
Oh, my God.
After sexually assaulting this daughter, he ate some of their food. He stole a small amount of money and just walked out the front door.
Wow, that's it?
Yep.
Wow.
And I'm going to say right up front here that the face mask is maybe what makes this case like haunting and boogeyman terrifying, besides what he's doing, of course. The face mask is not just a ski mask. It has white stitching to make a tiny hole for each eye and then a tiny hole for the mouth.
Which is like, why would you even do that to yourself also? Like, you can't.
Yeah, but it just looks like a horror movie thing.
It does. It
looks like from the mind of James Wan and like fucking this is a sequel to Insidious. Like it just looks like a horror movie thing.
It does. It's fucking terrifying.
Yes, it does.
I think that's part of it too. Like that's part of why it sticks out in your brain. Yeah.
Also during this attack, at some point he picked up the phone and pretended to have a phone call about moving the children with like some pretend associate, but we know that he had already cut the phone lines. So weird. So he did kind of a decoy phone call to make it look like he was planning the attack with others, just to like theoretically confuse the victims.
And scare them probably, and like make them feel like they're being watched.
Yeah. Oh. So December 1988, we have our second known attack by quote unquote Mr. Cruel. By the way, I didn't get where he gets that nickname, but I'm pretty sure like the newspapers or something just slap it on him because it makes sense.
Yeah, it's horrifying. He's very cruel.
He's very cruel.
Yeah.
So he attacks the Wills family who live in East Ringwood, another well-to-do suburb of Melbourne. He binds, gags, and blindfolds the family, essentially. And he tells the parents, or the father rather, with a gun to his head, quote, "You're not going to do anything stupid. Don't be a hero."
What the fuck?
He had also cut the phone lines. He takes randomly $35.
That's and then okay.
He then kidnaps one of the family's 4 daughters, 10-year-old Sharon Wills.
Oh, God damn it.
And she is taken to a home, and we're pretty sure it's his home, where she was blindfolded and assaulted. You can imagine.
Right.
So a huge search ensues for Sharon, and remarkably, 18 hours later, she is found alive.
That's so crazy.
She had been left by the side of the road, wrapped in garbage bags that were taped around her. She was wearing just a man's white shirt and then had the garbage bags around her.
Jesus.
Yeah. So, although Sharon was horrifically assaulted, she was able to give some details about like what he was. She describes him as being randomly, quote unquote, gentle at times, like when he wasn't attacking her. Yeah, it's all gross.
Hate that. I mean, it's not like I want him to not be, but that is just like, that feels like particularly like psychopathic for some reason.
For sure. You know? Sure. Oh yeah. It's kind of gross either way. Really. Right. but yeah. She told authorities how she was fed and cleaned, and like bathed and stuff.
Okay.
I guess all while blindfolded, which is kind of weird.
That is weird.
Blindfolded the whole time. And she said that he called her by her name right away before he had any reason to know it.
Oh, I don't love that at all.
So it's very firmly believed he stalked her and the family and planned this out and had selected her.
Wow, dude. That's so scary to think about that.
Yeah.
That it was not random. That's like, ugh.
Yes. We'll talk about that. It's part of his MO for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So boop, boop, boop. And the footage, by the way, too, of Sharon like being carried home by her dad is just like so heartbreaking. You're just like, you're happy she's home, but it's like, Jesus Christ, like,
yeah,
that girl is so little and like wholesome, and it's so fucked up,
so wrecked, so fucking wrecked.
Yeah. Ugh. So 1990, Mr. Cruel here busts a window in the home of 13-year-old Nicola Linus and her 15-year-old sister, who were home alone, but they were asleep, and their parents were out for a dinner party.
Mm-hmm.
And he had definitely staked out the home and knew that their parents were gone at this time.
So once again, you see that there's stalking, there's prior knowledge of what's going on.
Yes. So he breaks into the house and he abducts Nicola, but before doing so, he binds her sister and tells her that he wants $25,000 of ransom. But that's a ruse, obviously. He had no intention of doing any kind of ransom plan, just another weird distraction.
Right.
So also before leaving the home, he took some random stuff, like things like records, a jacket, like just trophy shit.
Right.
Yeah. He took Nicola to an unknown location, but I believe it's also his home, and we'll circle back to that.
Okay.
They just can't confirm it's his home, right? Because we don't know who this is. Spoiler alert.
Right.
50 hours later, so even longer than Sharon, over 2 days later, Nicola is found left at an electrical station very close to her family home, bound and gagged.
So he's extending the amount of time he holds on to these kids.
Yes. And she was dropped off there and found on her 14th birthday. She had also been cleaned and bathed and had received similar like weird treatment. I mean, like, yeah.
That's so fucking weird. I wonder if he knew it was her birthday.
Maybe.
That's like, ugh. It's so gross.
Yeah. So Nicola and Sharon, these kind of surviving victims here, are able to tell us quite a bit about their time, even though they were blindfolded.
I mean, that's not your only sense, like...
Yeah, exactly. And they reported being chained to a bed.
Ugh.
The whole time. Yeah, these children. And Sharon Wills, even though she was also blindfolded, of course, bravely managed to kind of take the blindfold off for just a moment when she knew that he stepped out of the room. And she got a like photo perfect description of the room, which you can go see and like Google image search Mr. Cruel house or room, and it's like really perfectly described, and it's creepy. Yeah. So thanks to Sharon, we know that he had peach colored floor length curtains in this room, a double bed with a peach colored bed head, and a big TV in front of the bed with, get ready to have shivers, a fucking blanket was placed over the TV.
Oh, why is that so creepy?
It's because it's a GSK thing.
Oh my God.
The blanket over the TV with the static. Yeah.
Wait, what year was this?
I'm going to get into GSK, don't worry.
Okay.
But this is 87 to 91.
Oh my God, dude. What the fuck?
Yep. They both said that they also heard planes, like very loudly. So people think that he was probably close enough to the airport in Melbourne that you could hear the planes.
I mean, that's like me. I'm a mile from the airport, and you can like if we're outside when one goes over, we have to stop talking. It's like so fucking loud.
Yeah. So it's that definitely potentially creates a radius of where he could live.
Yeah, for sure.
So more about just the shared MO of each of these attacks so far. Like I said, he surveils and stalks each of the families and the girls. He told Nicola during her abduction that he had watched her walking home from school each day.
Oh no. Okay, way to make her never feel safe ever again. Ever.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Ever.
Yeah. And both Nicola and Sharon were abducted during school holidays. So he even knew where they went to school, what their kind of schedules looked like.
This is horrifying.
And the first unnamed family and the Wills family had also both been featured in their local paper not that long before they were attacked. So Sharon Wills was in the paper with her family as she had been saved from a fire in the home. Dude, heroically.
What the fuck?
Yeah, as if Sharon's fucking hasn't been through enough, right?
Right. Jesus.
And this article, in telling the story of the fire, mentioned that the girls slept in bunk beds in the same room. So that he takes that information and uses it.
That's horrible. That's fucked.
Yes. All of the families that he attacks are from really well-off suburbs.
Okay.
Which is interesting. And most of the victims either lived or ended up being dropped off near an electrical substation. So people think maybe he has some affiliation with them, or he perhaps works at one. Who knows?
Yeah, because he's familiar with it. He feels like it's a good place to put them.
Yes.
There's got to be some comfort thing there for him.
Yes. All right. So up to our final-ish thing here, incident. August 1991, around 9 p.m., 13-year-old Carmen Chan, who, by the way, attended the same school as one of the other victims, was babysitting her 9 and 7-year-old sisters while her parents worked at their restaurant. They had like a family restaurant. He abducts Carmen at knife point in front of her siblings.
God damn it.
He first locks the 2 younger girls into a closet, then takes Carmen away. And again, he also strategically chose this time because he knew the parents were not home.
Right. So he knew he could break in and there would just be children there.
Yes. So found written on the Chan family car in kind of graffiti was, quote, "Payback Asian drug deal, more to come." But we all know, obviously, this is another Mr. Cruel ruse to try and confuse people. But with this one, very annoyingly to me, police and authorities have actually took it seriously and investigated it. And kind of oh, there must be some kind of Asian gang or drug connection, despite the fact that the family is super wholesome and upstanding and there's zero criminal history, zero gang associations. And they're no, we don't do drugs.
What the fuck?
We have a Chinese restaurant. What are you fucking talking about? But because they're Asian, there's this racist thing of
little racism in action.
Even though it's obviously Mr. Cruel, they're oh, maybe it was an Asian gang thing though,
God, yeah, that they came and stole one of their daughters who went to school with another similarly aged victim of the same type of crime. Give me a fucking break.
It's so irritating. And there's even detectives and some of the Mr. Cruel shows I watch and stuff who are legitimately entertaining this. And I'm could you not? Could you seriously
at this point, knock it the fuck off. We all know.
We obviously know this is the guy.
Yeah.
Stop. We know this is the guy. And it's also like him to put a ruse thing in the mix, right?
3 for 3, man. Come on.
Yeah, exactly.
Figure it out, guys.
Anyway, but just to say it's annoying that people take that seriously. It's stupid.
Yes, agreed.
And then, so Carmen Chan is missing for quite some time. And in one of the most heart-wrenching things I've ever seen, Carmen's mother, Phyllis, and her dad have a press conference not that long after she goes missing. And she holds up a little dress of Carmen's. And she's crying and just screaming in a visceral agony. And she says, "Please, my daughter." And then she says, "Please, my daughter." And then she says, "Carmen, this is your favorite dress. You have to come home and wear it."
Oh, God. Oh,
excruciating.
It's like how you hear when people, someone close to them dies and they can't get rid of their shoes.
Oh,
because,
yeah.
They're going to come back and wear them. So you can't possibly get rid of them. And it's such a weird grief process. And it's really weird for the parents to be kind of publicly, they don't know what's happened to their daughter, but to be kind of publicly already putting a name to those emotions is so fucked up. It's so sad and scary and horrible.
It's so heart-wrenching. And obviously this case is really high profile. At this time, parents in Melbourne are totally on edge. There was those classic interviews with the parents being I'm not going to let my kids out, and blah, 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 or I'm not going to leave them home alone, which we're hey, maybe you shouldn't right now.
Yeah.
The whole public is very freaked out. And this is a big kind of top headline case. 1 year later, in April 1992, Carmen's skull is found in a landfill.
Oh my God. Which that's fucking horrible, but it's also extremely lucky that they found her. Because landfills, you don't find that there.
for sure. And we can tell from her head how she died, because she had been shot in the head execution style 3 times.
Holy shit. So this was that escalation.
Yes. So yeah, the next question, of course, everyone asks is, well, why did he kill Carmen when he didn't kill these others that we know about?
Yeah.
Some have speculated that, annoyingly, as I already said, that because this is a murder, they go right to the graffiti and they're like, oh, well, it's an Asian gang thing. It's not the killer. I'm like, no. It's Mr. Cruel. It's Mr. Cruel.
I just rolled my eyes like into the back of my head. Like I couldn't even help it. I was just like, are you fucking kidding me? Like,
it's really stupid.
Come on.
Another more likely theory, I mean, besides just like plain old serial killer escalation,
right?
Which could just happen for no reason, of course. But others have pointed out, and I think this is quite possible and legit, that Carmen, people who knew her and her family, say she was really feisty and would never, ever have gone down without a fight. Like she would have been hitting and kicking and stuff. So people think maybe she fought back so hard that's why it escalated.
Gotcha. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. And she was a bit older too, right? Or no, I guess Nicola was the same age. But anyway.
Right.
Yeah,
but she was probably just more like, she was probably just more herself. She probably fought back. She probably wasn't as like chill. And that's not victim blaming at all, because like, fuck that shit, but that is a fair, like maybe he just got frustrated, or maybe she saw him, maybe as part of like fighting back. Maybe she took the fucking blindfold off and he caught her.
That's another theory. Is that she saw his face.
And he saw her see his face. Yeah.
Yes.
That's
another strong
possible
theory, because he clearly is very militant about the blindfolding thing.
Yeah.
I
feel like if I had to guess, I'd say that's what it was, because I don't feel like he necessarily would have escalated to that point. He seems to be a very like careful criminal, and he plans everything out.
And I think the logic of his mask and their blindfold is why he thinks in his logic he can drop them off.
Yeah. And maybe
they didn't see him.
And she, I mean, I don't want to jump ahead, but she's the final victim that we know of, right?
That we know of.
Yeah.
About to get to that. Yeah.
But that also could have been, sorry, I was going to say that could have been part of like, maybe he did stop after that, because people who don't want, like there are like people who are like serial like child rapists, but are not murderers. So it may have been the type of thing where after killing that child, it like,
or he moved or changed MO.
I mean, for sure. Yeah. But like, for any number of things could have happened, but I feel like he kind of disappeared after this, and it's interesting because, I don't know. I just feel like if it was a true escalation, he would have continued until he got caught, but I don't know. Anyway, sorry, I'm just theorizing.
No, there's lots of theories here. Again, spoiler alerts, we don't know who Mr. Cruel is. So at least 7 suspects for Mr. Cruel. The official suspects have been quote unquote not ruled out. So there's
7?
that.
7. Oh, wow.
That are just on the table. And it's actually thought, this is, I learned a lot of new stuff in doing this case. It's actually thought that he's officially connected to 12 assaults.
Oh, wow.
Including these. Yeah. And by the word assaults, I read over and over, I'm taking that to mean rapes and abductions, but not murders.
Okay. I feel like they'd say murder if they meant murder.
Yeah. Yeah. So 12 assaults total, including these, officially. But for some reason, the info about the rest of them just isn't out there. But sometimes you do hear things from his earliest victim, and she dates back to 1985.
Okay.
So I do think there's a longer span of murders on either end here. I just think that for some reason, the canonical Mr. Cruel crimes are these ones.
So you think he murdered other people, other children? You do?
Yes. I think there's a bigger stretch of murders and abductions on either side of this. We just, like I said, these are the ones that hit the headlines as the Mr. Cruel cases, and that's what we have. So we don't have information on the other ones, but I saw in multiple places that 12 is agreed upon by investigators.
Okay.
Yeah, at least 12. So Brian Ankler, a former professor from Melbourne, is actually one of the suspects. I thought I would just mention one for fun. He spent 10 years in prison for tying up 6 girls. This is all separate incidents, and assaulting them at knife point.
He only got 10 years for 6 different instances of that?
Yep.
Wow.
And a balaclava and a knife were found in his attic.
Okay. There you go.
That's Brian Ankler. He seems like a real piece of shit. They some 60 Minutes Australia, I think I was watching, like did that classic like Dateline thing where they try to like interview him, like, hey Brian, and he's just like, fuck off, you know. He was like very, very grumpy.
Yeah, you would expect that. Ew, why only 10 years? The fuck?
Yeah, it's a great question.
Yeah. He should be like super stoked. He should be like the happiest guy alive because he got away with some really fucked up shit for basically nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. So prior to GSK being caught in 2018, people definitely theorized that that it was him, and he just like popped on over to Australia for a little bit. Afterwards, once we identified Joseph James D'Angelo in 2018, they could quantifiably prove he never went to Australia at that time.
Okay.
So we know for sure it was not him, but the MO similarity is fucking spooky.
Yeah, it really is.
The food, the random things, the attacking of children, which GSK also did, the binding of the family, the assaulting people with the family in the next room, the
escalation to murder.
The TV fucking thing is spooky. Like,
yeah, that's so fucking creepy.
Very similar dudes, for sure.
Yeah.
Weirdly. So there's a $1.2 million reward actively for information, and the investigation is open as fuck.
Yeah.
They are still trying to find him. They do like regular, like every anniversary, every year or so, they do like a whole thing of like, hey, we're still looking for this guy.
Right.
He very well could still be alive. This isn't that long ago. One issue facing the case, however, that makes me a little skeptical and sad is the total lack of forensic evidence.
I was going to ask, they have no DNA?
No, because the evidence is a fucking mess. There was DNA. At one point, I'll explain.
Oh, okay.
It's literally all this police being like blah, 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 like just bungling shit.
Weird.
So there was so that early 1985 case I mentioned had a rope that was taken from the victim, like she was found still bound.
Right.
And that rope went missing.
Nice.
No way to test it.
Way to go.
And from that case, there was a DNA sample and a rape kit taken.
And
they don't know if it's around. They just haven't found it.
This is pathetic.
The detective in the interview is like, yeah, I don't know. Like, we misplaced that, I guess.
I feel like when cops do that, like, okay, hear me out. When doctors are negligent and it ends in like death, when anybody basically in a situation, when a driver is negligent and it ends in death, they all get in trouble. So why aren't the cops in trouble for being so bad at their jobs and like losing evidence that could break a case and prevent more death? I just don't understand.
It's so bad. It's so bad. Yeah. There definitely was good DNA and forensic evidence, but all the cops were just like, whoa, in this case, and just bungled it.
My God.
So that's almost it. But in one last thing that's kind of neat, in March 2022, so just a year ago, there was actually an update in the case, which was a witness who kind of knew, I won't say newly, but she again came forward, and she was a neighbor of the Wills family.
Okay.
And her brothers actually saw him, Mr. Cruel, theoretically, struggling to peep over the fence with a video camera. Oh, by the way, God. I forgot to mention, in the room that Sharon Wills saw, there was a camera. He filmed all of these assaults on these girls.
Oh, that is so deeply fucking twisted.
Yeah, he filmed a lot.
That's so fucking fucked up.
So this woman's brothers, yeah, it's fucked up. This woman's brothers saw him struggling to kind of get the camera up over the fence, pointed at the Wills family. This was shortly before she was abducted. And so basically they caught him mid-stalk.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
In his stalking phase. And he saw that he was caught by these neighbor kids, and he kind of got startled and ran off.
Okay.
And these boys apparently did go to police after the abduction. The family did with them. And the police were like, meh, and didn't even take their statements.
Oh my fucking God. That is, wow. Wow.
Yeah. But they kind of came forward again because they were like, no, this like really stuck with us. Like we really
would expect it to,
It really like was cemented with them as like, we saw Mr. Cruel ever since. And they kind of, so they came forward again saying, hey, you ignored us, so we're still going to remind you that we saw this guy. And so they made a sketch just last year of what they saw.
Oh my God.
And that's what I'll post on the Instagram, is like the side by side of the horrifying ski mask and the new sketch. But basically he is like a meh looking short, thin-ish white guy with a pot belly. They describe him as looking unkempt and kind of overweight, but also very distinctive looking. He kind of has a beard. And he was wearing a flannel shirt. But anyway, you can look at the sketch and it's very creepy. And for some reason, they kind of like did a thing with the eyes where they're like blurred. I don't know what it is, but it's a very creepy sketch for a creepy man.
It's so weird that he's just like a gross, like middle-aged piece of shit, essentially.
Yeah. 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 And what they described matches the description of the girls, because obviously they couldn't see his face. They never saw his face, but they kind of got a sense of his build, right? And height and things like that vaguely. So it all kind of matches up. But yeah, that's Mr. Cruel. He hopefully hasn't gotten away with it, but he has so far, and it's fucked up.
I mean, he might be pretty old at this point, you know. It's been a long fucking time. So
he could be old. He could for sure be old. Yeah.
It would be great if he got caught like GSK, you know? I mean, it's never too late.
I wish there was like DNA, because then at least you could do the genetic whatever the fuck thing.
Yeah.
Genetic genealogy. Yeah.
Oh, goddamn. Okay. Fuck, dude. I hate that one. I don't know why. Like,
it's horrible.
I fucking hate it. I hate it. Ugh.
Yeah. It's horrible. It's so scary. The mask is so fucking scary. Like,
yeah. It really is.
God.
Oh my God. Okay. Blech. Well, I'm not gonna really do anything much better. I'm gonna do the Lin family murders. This is a murder that took place in Australia, in New South Wales, I believe. Yeah, in Sydney, or like in a suburb called North Epping in 2009. And I'm gonna start with Brenda Lin. She was in high school in 2009, and she was taking a flight to New Caledonia for an excursion with some classmates. Her father had dropped her off and was trying to say goodbye to her. And she was like, I'm only gonna be gone a week, kind of like rolling her eyes, like didn't hug him, didn't kiss him.
Oh, gosh.
Just said goodbye. Like didn't even really say goodbye, just like ran off and was like, whatever.
Yeah. Peace.
You know, teenagers, this is how they are. This is what they do. You know, they're not appreciative of their family. Like I'm preparing for that with my lovely little shit. She was 15 at the time, so it's like the perfect age to just be like,
oh yeah, for sure.
Lame parents, I hate you.
Yeah, whatever, dad.
Yeah, exactly. So this was in mid-July. It was after, you know, I think it was between her probably, what would that be, like June, sophomore and junior year, or maybe even freshman and sophomore year. But anyway, so she flies, you know, with her classmates to go do this thing, and her family all stays behind. Her family is Min Lin, his wife Yun Lin, their sons Henry and Terry, and daughter Irene. So the rest of these people are there. Sorry, it's not daughter Irene, it's Yun's sister Irene. So it's mother, father, two sons, and an aunt. And they all live together in this house in North Epping. And the family is very, very close. Now, Min Lin was a news agency proprietor, so he owned like a news agency. And so he was like super hardworking. It was one of those things where like the parents, you know, came to Australia. They wanted to like make a better life for their family. So they worked their asses off and became pretty successful at this news agency. And you know, had a lot of money and things were going really well. Obviously, you know, if they're 15-year-olds like taking this, you know, trip, you know, overseas and whatever, you know, like they're doing well, right?
For sure.
So they all lived together, and it was something like 150 yards or 300 yards, something like that. Very, very close. Robert and Kathy, I don't know how to say this last name, and I tried to look it up, but I got conflicting. It's Xie. This was
I want to say Je.
Je? That's what I heard. G. I heard Je.
G or Je, yeah, for sure.
So in any case, this is Yun Lin's sister, Kathy, and her husband, who goes by Robert. His name is Lian Bin, but he goes by Robert. So they lived just down the street, right? So this family's very tight, obviously. These people all live near each other. They all probably spend a lot of time together. You know, and you know, Min and Yun work at this news agency together, so it's this very tight thing. So now we're looking at the early morning of July 18th, 2009. Min Lin, who's 45, his wife Yun, who's 43, Henry, who's 12, Terry, who's 9, and Irene, who's 39, were all found bludgeoned to death in their home. Kathy, Min Lin's sister, and her husband Robert started to receive calls around 8 a.m. from people being like, now I don't know if they were like delivering newspapers or what the deal is with the news agency, but basically people were like, the agency's not open, like can you go, you know, what's going on, basically. Not so much like can you go check on the family, more just like general, like where's the news, like what's going on, you know. So Kathy and Robert go over to the house, they knock on the door, they can't, they, you know, they don't see anybody, nobody answers, but the front door is unlocked. So they open the door and they walk in, and in each room they find a bloody fucking massacre. Ugh. Yeah. So Robert, for whatever reason, immediately leaves and goes and picks up Yun and Kathy's parents and brings them back to this house where the massacre has occurred. I don't know. He's like, we have to go get your parents. Like, I have to bring them here. They have to know what's going on.
What? No.
Isn't that weird?
Don't like, do that.
I know. He was just like, I gotta go. Like, I have to go pick up your parents. So he leaves and goes and gets the parents and comes back. Police and paramedics arrive, but all of the family members are dead. So they were all bludgeoned to death in their beds. The really sad thing, the brothers shared a room and there were signs of a struggle, which is horrifying because they're 12 and 9 years old. So you just know that they're like terrified, right? Yeah. Fucking horrible. So there was blood spatter, and there are photos of this online, and I do not recommend looking at them because they are fucking graphic. They don't show the bodies, but they show the blood spatter. Which was a lot. Like, it was more than a lot of crime scenes that I've seen. It was really like notable, and I think that's why there's photos of it. I think that's why it gets brought up a lot in the reporting on this case. It was horrific. It went from floor to ceiling and everywhere. All of the victims were so disfigured that they had to use forensic analysis to, you know, I mean, they knew who they were, but they had to make sure, obviously, and they couldn't do it by looking at them. So pretty fucking horrifying. So the police start investigating and they realize like the lock wasn't broken. So somebody had to use a key or the family left the door open. But they're thinking somebody used a key because nothing had been ransacked, nothing had been stolen. And it was clear that the murderer knew the layout of the house because the first thing that he did was kill the circuit breaker, like shut it off so there's no power. So it's like pitch black, right?
Gotcha.
The other thing is they start to realize by, you know, through investigating that this person knew that Brenda was not home. He knew that their 15-year-old daughter was gone. And the way that they figured out that he knew that was that there were bloody, like, you know, there's blood on all of the door handles of the rooms where the victims were sleeping, except for Brenda's. They didn't even bother to open the door.
Oh, shit. So they didn't try.
They didn't even try because they fucking knew that she wasn't there. So they're starting to think like, this is a fucking inside job. Like, this is somebody who knew the family. And they start kind of like asking, you know, friends and neighbors, like, did they have any enemies? You know, he's got a news agency. Like, he could have been reporting stuff to like upset, you know, that upset people, whatever. No, everybody was like, he doesn't have any enemies. Like, they're just a really lovely family. The family is all very tight. Like, we don't fucking, like, nobody knows why or who or there was no apparent motive. So, you know, they've got nothing to go on. They just have more and more like horrific fucking information about like what happened. Like, basically the killer started with something like a hammer, which they later that is important, but they at first they're like the first few victims look like they were smashed with a hammer, and then it looks like something else. Also, 4 of the 5 victims had also been choked or had signs of asphyxia of one type or another.
So brutal.
Yes. So really, really fucked up shit. I don't exactly, I don't know. I don't know how it took them 2 years to arrest somebody. So I don't know how they came up with, what the timeline was for all of this. But they also noted that there were 24 bloody shoe prints, and they were a US size 8.5 to 10.5. And that was the only shoe print. And it was like this very particular kind of shoe. And, they were trying to like determine, who wears that size, that knows these people. But it's hard, like an 8.5 to a 10.5, that's multiple sizes of shoes, so that could be multiple people. Like if you have a suspect with an 8.5 and a suspect with a 10.5, like that doesn't help you determine who's more likely the killer, because they don't know the exact size, right? So they had some stuff. They were like, it's a lone attacker. They probably had a key or knew where a key was. They knew the daughter was gone, so it's somebody who knows them, but they don't really know what's going on. They can't really figure it out. So Brenda comes back from her trip, and she ends up going to live with Robert and Kathy, and they start to raise her because nobody else can. Like, her whole fucking family's dead, and her fucking aunt. So it's super, super traumatizing. Luckily, like I said, they were all really close. So, Brenda was fine. She was, no problem, kind of making the transition, and at least in terms of that, like going to live with the family, with her aunt and uncle. But then in 2011, Brenda comes forward, and I think that they maybe were already kind of circling around a suspect. But at some point, now I've read a couple of things, but one thing that I read in more than one place was that the final nail in the coffin for arresting their suspect was when Brenda came forward to police and let them know that her uncle, Robert, was assaulting her and had always been kind of creepy with her, kind of weird with her, and it had kind of escalated since she lived with her aunt and uncle. So cops are like, that's real fucking weird that he's doing that. And also they started surveilling him, and they noticed some real weird shit. So for instance, they discovered that the shoe print at the house was this very specific type of ASIC sneaker, right? And in May 2010, so they already kind of knew about this before Brenda came forward, but I don't think they really, it's like you have all these puzzle pieces, but you can't quite fit them together. And then that piece comes forward and it all comes together. So in May 2010, the police told Kathy about the shoes. Like, hey, we figured out what the print is. It's this very specific, particular type of ASICS brand shoe. And they tell her that, and they do this shit on purpose because they are doing a surveillance of this family. And as soon as they tell her that, she goes home and tells Robert, who is then caught on surveillance camera cutting up his size 9.5 ASICS sneaker box and flushing it down their toilet, because it is the exact fucking shoe that was found at the house. It was also found later that Robert cleaned his garage on the morning of the murders. And there's a very good reason that he did this, because he probably went home after murdering all of them and got all his clothes off and discarded of whatever, murder weapons and things in the garage, and then had to clean it because there was evidence. So police arrest Robert on, I believe, May 5th, 2011, after Brenda comes forward. And the thing about this is, I might get shit and people might be like, Brenda didn't come forward. She didn't come forward, because there are conflicting reports that say that she actually stood by her uncle. But I don't necessarily think that means, just because she doesn't think he killed her family, or it didn't at first, doesn't mean that he didn't like molest her or do weird, creepy things to her. Right. So then the police arrest him they have the surveillance of the shoebox, but they have Brenda. So they kind of have a motive, like maybe he wanted better access to their daughter, right?
Right.
But they're still not sure. So they keep doing, they keep gathering evidence. They search his house, they search the garage that they found out that he cleaned. And behind something, I think it was like a refrigerator or like a shelf, they move it and they find a stain. A very, very small stain. And you can see a photo of this online as well. It's tiny. Like you and I, like we would I would never even see it. I would never even see it. I mean, I guess if I was like hired specifically to find stains, but it could have been anything, dude. It could have been dirt. It could have been oil from a car. It could have been fucking anything. Like it doesn't particularly look like blood, but it was. And they got DNA from this blood stain, and they found that it contained DNA from 4 out of 5 of the victims.
Oh, wow. Slam dunk.
Yeah. Slam fucking dunk.
Yeah.
So, pardon me. So police, he's then fucking arrested. He's being charged. The police were like, yes, he wanted to get to Brenda, but they also started kind of getting more information from people that possibly Robert was really jealous of this family, of Min and Yun, because they had a really successful business. They came over, they came to Australia, tried really hard to like make it, and they did. And meanwhile, Robert had been a successful ENT doctor in China, and he thought, okay, I'm going to come to Sydney. I'm going to be just as successful. He opens a restaurant and he fails. So he goes from this really well-respected guy in China to kind of like a failure in Australia.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, his sister and brother-in-law are living it up. They're having, the good life. They've got this beautiful family. It's just Robert and Kathy. And also, potentially, Robert's got some weird interest in Brenda. So they have all this, kind of various motives, all of this.
So evidence. Gross.
It's
and
so
thinking
disgusting.
Also, if the family's gone, then Brenda will live with them.
Yeah.
Potentially. Yeah.
Yeah. And the craziest thing is that she was living with the murderer of her family for like nearly 2 years during all of this investigation. And the police just kind of left her there. And they had a lead on this for at least a year before they fucking arrested him. Wow. And they left her in that house. And they didn't tell her anything, obviously, which like, I don't know how to feel about it, because if they were wrong, I feel like no matter what, you could argue that what they did was right. You could argue that what they did was wrong. But I find it really interesting. So anyway, he is arrested, like I said, May 5th, 2011. He goes to trial in 2012. And then I think it ends up actually pushing to like September 2013 because they didn't have all the DNA. So they finally delay the trial until March 2014. And so I believe that, I can't remember, something happened and he ended up getting a second trial in August 2014, but then something happened and it got pushed. So then finally, this real actual trial happens all the way in February 2015. So he's been in prison for 4 years awaiting trial because he had been refused bail. And he pleads not guilty. And he ends up, what happens? It's a hung jury. Sorry, my notes are a little sideways here. So it's a hung jury. And they do a retrial for August 2016. So like, we're now fucking, 7 years past the murders, 5 years past the arrest. And the craziest thing is that he was given bail at the end of 2015. So he's fucking out. Yeah.
Wow. That's nuts.
And once again, so he ends up going back to trial in June, probably because they're like, this guy's out of prison. We need to hurry this the fuck up. And again, the jury cannot reach a unanimous verdict.
That's so surprising.
I know, right? I'm like, there's DNA
the blood.
Evidence.
Yeah.
There's motive. He had a key to the house. He didn't fucking steal anything. He didn't even attempt to make it look like he was trashing the place or anything. He just straight up went in, murdered the family, and left. Like, but once again, they cannot get a unanimous verdict. But what's crazy is that in Australia, they have a little thing where you don't need it. They'll take a majority verdict. Yeah.
Okay.
So he was eventually found guilty in 2017. Fucking, what is that, 10 years after the murder almost?
Almost, yeah.
Almost, yeah. He was found guilty of 5 counts of murder, and he was given 5 consecutive life sentences in prison without the possibility of parole, which is pretty gnarly considering that he like wasn't even convicted unanimously. I'm not saying I disagree with it. I'm just saying it's kind of wild that they gave him such a gnarly sentence for something that like a jury couldn't fully. But I think both times it was just like one jury member being like, "Oh, I don't know. I don't know."
Yeah, that's so weird. Yeah.
So, yeah, it pretty fucked up. He tried to appeal and it got thrown out in 2021. And Brenda did come forward and say, you know, he regularly sexually assaulted her, and that was a big part of like, yeah. He was never charged for those assaults, which actually really bothers me.
Weird. Okay.
Yeah, pretty fucked up. So I think that, you know, Brenda lives with a lot of guilt for the way that she left that day to go on that trip when she was only
for
15 years old. You know, it's just horrifying to think that like something every teenage kid would just do naturally because, you know, fuck your parents, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Ends with like her never seeing any of her family again and just feeling that horrible guilt, you know?
Yeah.
And knowing that like the last time she saw her dad, she was like kind of being mean to him. Is really fucking terrible. And then for her to go to this house and be like sexually assaulted for fucking 2 years by the man who murdered her fucking family, it's gross. It's such a fucking next level horrible fucking case.
What a monster.
I know. What a fucking monster. So that's the story. God damn it.
There we go. Wow.
Yeah. And this motherfucker's still saying he's not guilty and he's still trying to get out of prison. And I'm like, dude, you didn't even get time for fucking assaulting your fucking 16-year-old niece, you know, you fucking piece of shit.
Wow.
Ugh, I hate him. I hate him so much.
He's very hateable.
Yes.
Dang, Australian murders.
There they
They're
are.
gnarly. Wow.
They are fucking gnarly. So there they are. There's the first 2. Hope y'all like them. Goddamn. We'll be back next episode in a couple of days here with the next 2 cases. My next case is far worse than the one I just did, which is insane. And
good.
Yeah, also involves a young girl. What the fuck? Who am I this week? I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know who I am. I take 1 week off and I suddenly have like a heart of stone.
My case is more in the frustrating, unresolved frustrating category, and I'll make you scream 1,000 times.
You fucking love those. You love those so much.
I do. Yeah.
You do. Well, each to their own, but I'm taking a sharp left turn from what I normally do. So hope you guys enjoy those. Thanks again, everybody, for listening. Sorry we took the week off. My internet is not still 100%, but I just got the thing. I just have to install it. And then hopefully there will be no lags, no weird noises. It'll be back to the way it was like a month ago before this all started going down. But again, thanks everybody for your patience. We love you. And until the next one,
stay
off our
best.
Bye.